Got West Coast List Manager Rohan O'Brien here. Rohan, thanks for joining us.
No problem, guys. Good to be here.
We were just saying it's your earliest start of the draft since 2010. You must be pretty excited.
Yeah, look, it's not the way you want to get there, but when it comes around, it's quite exciting, yeah.
When you're in this process, you're a couple of days out. What are you doing in your recruiting team over these couple of days?
Oh, look, mate, I think most of us are pretty settled now on most things. You're just going over and there's probably a few little pockets of things that you want to just make sure you got right, and maybe you just got little groups of players where you keep going back and make sure that you're comfortable with how you have them ranked.
So what do you do at 8 and 12? Are you looking for a combination of players in terms of needs and talent, or do you just go the most talented players and one's not dependent on the other? How do you work through that process when you've got two really nice picks?
Yeah, they are good picks, Callum. We'll just stick to the talent ranking at those picks. Depending on what happens after that, we may continue in that vein, but we'll obviously look at who we've already picked and see if we want to balance things up after that.
There's always a bit of cat and mouse when you've got two picks in close succession. I mean, how much does that factor into your decision making, and the clubs in between that you might lose one of your guys on your board? How much does that factor in?
A little bit, it does for sure. You kind of don't go into it thinking you may have to do that, but if there's a couple of players available when your pick comes around and you got another one 4 picks later, you certainly think, can we manufacture this to get both?
We're just saying, do you want to be the cat or the mouse? You want to be the cat? You probably want to be the cat, I guess, but... Anyway.
Yeah, I think you certainly want to be the cat. Yeah.
All right, Ruben Jim, we just saw some of his highlights there. I know he's been a player that's been linked to you guys for a little bit, and he's in the draft range. There's no doubt about that. Tell us about his year and how much of a consideration he could be for you.
Oh, look, Ruben's certainly a very talented player, and he is in our draft range, there's no question. He's had a really good year, starting off with league footy at East Perth and then went back and played school footy at Wesley and had a strong carnival for WA. So he's in the range of our picks. I don't think there's any denying that, but there's a lot of other talented players there that in that range that present pretty well. If
Jimby gets drafted by West Coast, and it's still an if at this point, but wherever he goes, do you see him being an inside midfielder from day one, or does he start his career as a half-back? What's the sort of idea around what we've seen so far and what it could become with him?
That may depend on where he lands, Cal, to be honest, which club has him. I think he could start in either role and do it very well. It's just really maybe what that club has needs at the moment and where they want to start him.
You got 4 picks inside the top 26 as things stand. Where does the range come that you start targeting needs as opposed to best player available? Is there a point in the draft where you think right now we need to target needs on our list, or do you go best player available the whole way through?
I think we'll make that judgment on the run a little bit. One based on who we've already picked and one based on who's left.
Yep.
So I don't think there's a cut-off point where we go from this point on, we start looking at needs, because there might be some really good talent left there and you just want to get it in the bank.
Ed Allen and Jed Bustling, are they guys that could come into contention as well for those first rounders?
Potentially, yeah. They both offer a lot in different ways, obviously, but... you feel like they might be in that range and they could come into consideration.
There has been some talk around potentially even moving back up. You went from 2 to 8 and 12. Has there been much discussion on moving back up from 8 to target someone again, or is that probably more unlikely at this point?
I feel like it's more unlikely at this point. We did what we did back through the trade period to get the extra first-round selection. We're very comfortable where our selections are. If someone comes to us, you always think, but I think it's more unlikely than likely.
The names that Cal just mentioned then, with Ruben Jidby and Jed Bustlinger and Ed Allen, all obviously WA talent, how much does that factor into a decision on the night? Or, as we said, you've been a club in the past last year and going back even further to back yourself in and take interstate talent and back yourself in to retain them. How much will that factor into your decision making?
It's always a factor, and if you think you've got 2 players close together in talent and one's in WA and one's outside, you probably lean towards the local, but we'll continue to back our club in, and if we think that there's a player there that's significantly better, then we'll back ourselves to keep the player.
Are you sick of that question?
Probably, Cal. Yeah. but it's a fair question.
No, I'm not having a crack at you, Riley. But it is sick in terms of the fact that the players it seems like there's a trend that's evolved over the last couple of years, particularly over the recent trade periods, which we've seen. Jason Horne-Francis left after 1 year.
Yeah.
Luke Jackson after 3. Isaac Rankin after 4.
Tanner Bruin
after 2. Are you sensing that to be a trend that you've had to invest even more questioning and psychology around when you speak to these players around the willingness to get up and go?
Oh, look, I think it's something we've certainly got our eye on. When I say I'm sick of the question, it's fine. I get the question and it's relevant, but I don't think that we've seen a trend over long enough to make us divert from what we've done in the past.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. It's been a rebuild that's happened a little bit by stealth over the last 12 months, but it didn't just start this year because you did take 5 picks last year and you'll take another 4 in the first 26 this season. Well, in terms of the strategy going forward, is it another couple of years of draft, big impacts before you're happy with that core, I guess you call it?
Yeah, it's been a deliberate plan, Cal. We did start last year and then we obviously did the trade last year, which gave us an extra pick this year. And at this point, we've got 3 picks in the first 2 rounds next year. So it's been deliberate what we're doing. And, we've had a list that's been quite mature and we had some success through the 2010s period, if you like. But we realised that we need to refresh things and it's been quite deliberate.
Do you feel like you're almost getting a bonus pick and player in this year because we didn't get to see Campbell Chesler, who was a first-round pick last year. We didn't get to see him because of injury in 2022. Do you feel like, in terms of analysing the list, you're actually getting a bonus player this year as well? Yeah,
look, I think you can look at it that way for sure. He was tracking really well before he got injured, and there's others as well. Luke Edwards is still really young and was tracking well and then missed pretty much all of last year. So there's those 2 boys and a couple of others that we feel like, that's a bonus for us coming into the next season.
What about Brady Hoff and Rhett Bazzo, a couple of players who West Coast fans might not have seen too much of yet, a couple of recent additions too? How are they tracking and what are the expectations for them heading into their sort of formative years?
They're going really well. They've hit the ground running with their pre-season. In terms of expectations for next year, look, they probably did get some opportunity through necessity more than anything, but I think it's giving them a good launch pad and they realise what they're up against now. So we're really positive on what they can offer this season and going forward.
Is there an area of the field positionally that you think you need to target?
Not necessarily, no. I think, when we have the picks that we've got, it'll largely be around talent and adding the best talent to the list.
You've had 5 top 20 picks since 2010. And then you got 3 this year. In terms of the way the list has come together, and the way it's going to continue building over the next couple of years, how important is it to nail this draft when you have a bit of a rarity in the sense that you have got early picks this year?
Yeah, look, it's very important. I think it's important to nail every draft where you can. But these opportunities don't come along all that often, so you get excited about what it can bring, and obviously if you do get your selections right, it can accelerate things.
What's the plan in terms of number of picks? You've got 5 capacity. Do you take the one at the back or just see how it plays out on Tuesday night?
Yeah, we'll probably see how that plays out, mate. We'll certainly have the 4 early picks and then we'll see who's available later on in the draft and make that call as to whether we use it in the national draft or the rookie draft.
We've asked a lot of the draft prospects that have come through over the last 24 hours what their plans are for the weekend in terms of taking their mind off it. But I suppose from a club perspective, you can't really do that. How do you spend the weekend and how much work is there still to go over the next 48, 72 hours?
We'll probably take a little bit of a breath, mate, and just try to take a step back. You're still thinking about things, and then Sunday our boys will come across from Perth, so we'll start meeting again on Sunday and working through what we think might happen on Monday, but tomorrow might be just a bit quieter.
What about the role of Adam Simpson in all of this? Riley's spoken a lot about how this is maybe an unusual place for the Eagles to have a number of early picks. Does that mean Simo gets a little bit more involved with some of the names that are a bit more familiar? It's probably a little bit easier to narrow in on the players that you're going to be assessing and weighing up when you've got the earlier picks. How's his involvement been in the process?
Look, he hasn't had a lot of involvement, to be honest. He's taken a real interest, obviously, but we keep in contact and we talk about what we're thinking, and he knows what path we're on, and I think he sees the positives in the boys that we might be able to bring in.
Just in terms of, I know you've probably had 100 questions about this, but the mega trade that did go down in the trade period and your involvement in it. We spoke to Brady Rawlings yesterday and just how many options were on the table and how many clubs were a part of it and then weren't a part of it and then came back in and came back out. Obviously, there was a couple of iterations of it. From your perspective, when did the idea of potentially moving back from 2 come into the thinking?
Probably really late in the piece, to be honest, and it was mainly based around the extra first round selection and then the selections for next year, which I know moving back from 2 to 8 is significant in itself, but to gain another first round selection and to set ourselves up for a good position in next year's draft, which looks pretty strong early as well. You never like moving back from 2, but bigger picture, we thought there was some good results in that. I
just wanted to ask you about that too, like the 2023 pool. We've been lucky enough this year to see a bit more of the 17-year-olds than obviously the last couple. How is the early assessment on that crop?
Look, I think we probably say every year, Kel, that next
grass is always greener.
Yeah,
the little brother's always better.
Yeah, we think
wait for the little brother. Wait for the next one.
But it's fair to say that some of the 17-year-olds had a good impact through the champs as well this year and played some really good footy in their state league. So the top part of the draft looks like it's got a fair bit of quality in it.
We might speak about the 2023 draft after a quick break. Rohan, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate it, and good luck on Monday night.
Thanks, boys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.